MatchMaker.fm connects podcasters and guests. Welcome to Matched, the show where we talk to some of the most incredible guests available for an interview right now. I'm your host, James Mulvany, founder of MatchMaker.fm, and this is Matched. Peter, welcome to Matched. How's it going?
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so we've met before. I've been on your podcast, which was really cool. It was a good experience. We'll start off with a couple of icebreakers, which is what we do here. So, random question: what is your most used emoji?
Probably the crying one. Laughter. I don't mean literally the sad crying one. I mean just crying with laughter, I guess. Yeah.
And how about, do you prefer to travel or do you prefer home?
Ooh, I like both, but I love traveling, and I guess since COVID, I'm missing the travel. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you missed it. I've missed it this year. I must admit, I was very lucky. I got to go away once over summer, but a lot of people haven't, and I've certainly missed out on like some business travel, kind of going to conferences, that kind of thing as well. It's always good fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so just give us a bit of a background then about what you do, and obviously you've got the Mind Takeaway podcast. So tell us about that.
Yes, I'm a leadership coach, and I'm also what's known as a creative catalyst. So that simply means I help people with leadership and to become more creative. Because funny enough, my background is pretty much a musician, plus having lots of different corporate jobs. And out of that came the Mind Takeaway, and we just wanted to create a podcast to help as many people as we could with the work that we do with our clients, I guess.
Can you describe what it's about?
Yeah, so it's a very human-centric podcast where we explore, like I say, leadership, creativity, and we talk to people from all walks of life: coaches, Silicon Valley people, business owners, anyone really that we see as someone who can connect humans, and they're looking to create in the world and give back rather than just taking,
What is your criteria when it comes to finding guests for the show?
We always like to have, like yourself, a quick chat just to get to know you. Because what we find is when we have a nice connected conversation, there's no barriers up. So when we end up, recording a show, it's usually just a nice conversation. Because when I first started out, I tried to copy the whole BBC trying to interview people, and that really didn't go very well. It was a bit wooden as well, to be fair.
Okay, I mean, I must admit, actually, I think because I did a 30 podcasts in 30 days was the challenge I set myself back in June, and yours was one of them. And I must admit, I really genuinely mean this. I did enjoy your podcast, and I think you have a really good interview technique. So I'm curious to see what would be your advice to someone else, and what is your approach to handling an interview? How have you kind of become that good?
If I'm honest, just by repetition. And maybe listen to the first few episodes, they're a bit wooden and a bit all over the shop, but I'm actually still proud of them because I can see the progression over we've just gone over 40 shows now. So it's just about being comfortable and having a nice connected conversation rather than interviewing. We have a fair few questions that we normally ask, and like yourself, we get the guests, relaxed at the start. But we just have nothing on wherever it goes, and that's been the magic and the power in some of our episodes, because I just couldn't have planned it up front. And the guests like yourself always say, wow, yeah, that was really cool. So far, so good.
So kind of like, to sort of simplify, let's just go with the flow. Don't get too stressed out about it. Just don't be afraid to ask questions, but let the conversation just lead and take its natural course, rather than, like you say, trying to be too kind of BBC, like stack of paper in front of you.
Yeah, and there's been times when I didn't know what to say, right? But the cool thing with that is you always end up resolving it. You be up in your head, but no one can hear that, right? And then the more you relax, the more the guest relaxes anyway. And then you end up just, like I say, having a nice connected conversation. And there's a lot of impact in that. So
definitely. So let's move on to MatchMaker. Why did you join MatchMaker in the first place?
Oh, it's been a great resource. So thank you. Because, I mean, we've been lucky. We get guests coming to us, and we already had a good network. But what I found when I joined MatchMaker is it was just that diversity, truly international selection of people that were all really really cool when they approached us. They had a really good way of framing what they did. They were very clear what they wanted. And it was very easy for me to see because of how clean your platform is. And, it just teed it up really nicely to find really good, high quality guests.
That's good to hear. And how many interviews would you say you've done as a result?
Well, I was just checking in with Mira. I've lost count. There's at least 6, 7, 8 really standout episodes. One quite recently with a lady called Vivian Aqua. And that was about authenticity and humanizing the workplace. And what we found is our listeners really resonated with that particular episode. But there's been many. I mean, like I say, very diverse people. One guy was from Silicon Valley. Another was a Fortune 500 coach. We've got a load more coming up for next year. For I don't know, for some reason, lots of book authors as well approached books on leadership, creativity, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been a really good resource. And if I'm honest, we haven't had to vet people like we did when they come from external sources, because they've been able to frame themselves really well, and there's great links, and you can already research whether they're going to be a good fit. So it actually saves me a load of time having to, check in with Mira and say, should we, shouldn't we? So usually we just have a 15-minute chat if we both agree they're going to be, an interesting guest, and then we just get on with recording a show.
Absolutely brilliant. What do you think makes a good guest?
Just someone who's willing to have a nice conversation, and they're not scared to tell you how things are. Like for you, for example, when we did the podcast for your episode, we're very, very clear in how things work and how they don't work in terms of being an entrepreneur and setting up a business. And you were very comfortable just sharing the warts and all, how it really works versus, what people put up, that mask and that ego. So for us, when we speak to guests, we're just like, look, we're going to ask you some questions. We're not going to put you on the spot or anything, but the more natural and authentic you are, the better. And that's where the quality episodes are, really.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I completely agree with you. I think there's been some. I think what I've noticed when I've interviewed people, the bad interviews tend to be people who've just got too much stuff pre-prepared, or they're just saying the same stuff again and again and again, and it just sort of becomes it's almost too polished. I think sometimes you can have a spiel that almost then becomes kind of disingenuous almost, and it just feels like they're just like reading off a sales script almost. So I think that's it. The key is like you just mentioned, having that conversation.
Yeah, and you know what, that saved us a lot, because we did have a few, very rare that we've had to say no, but there are a few people who I want to answer these 18 questions. And I said, well, not being horrible, it's our podcast, and as much as I love you and you seem like a cool guy, unless you're willing to be, a bit vulnerable and just see where it goes, then it's probably not a good fit. So.
And so would you advise people to be selective over who they have on?
I would do, yeah, because if I'm honest, at first, like we all do, I probably smelt a bit of desperation because we were just trying to get as many people to interview. And to be fair, it was more for practice as well. The background for us starting a podcast, we didn't really think about the business side of it until maybe halfway through. And then we see the power of how good it was for the brand and the marketing and how much it got us gigs and stuff like that. So all I would say is just get comfortable getting high quality guests, and also get comfortable having a nice conversation. And that's where the power of, the episodes will come through, and you'll get more listeners that way. Because early on, I looked at the numbers, and that really was just an annoyance. And actually, it was a lack of focus from my side. The more I concentrated on the quality of the guest and the conversation, the better the numbers increased, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give to someone who's maybe thinking about starting a podcast? What would your first, knowing what you know now, how would you have done it differently? And what would be your sort of advice to the first few steps that they should take?
Well, audio aside, because it's so easy to find a good quality mic, right? So don't worry too much about that. Just get started. Don't even overthink it. Just reach out, record your first episode. And like I said before, don't think about the numbers. Oh my God, I've only got 10 listeners after a week. It doesn't really matter, because if you produce high quality content, people will find you. I mean, we've been blown away by the number of people from all walks of life, different parts of the world that have reached out. And this was even without having to push it, marketing wise. And what we noticed is it was getting soul destroying with trying to force it on people versus actually just producing good content and trusting that people, will eventually find you. And let's be honest, this, James, it doesn't happen overnight. That's very rare that you suddenly get 1,000 downloads in a week. It doesn't work that way.
And what's been your approach to kind of getting it out there and marketing it? I know you're pretty good on LinkedIn. I see you see all the time on my feed. So
yeah, if I'm honest, it's been hit and miss. I think the biggest traction when we really realized we were doing it the right way and things were starting to happen is when a local Berlin magazine that's quite high profile put it as one of the top podcasts to listen to during COVID, and that. Because if I'm honest, no one even told us about it. The magazine didn't reach out. And it was actually through a mutual friend who supports other podcasters that must have, paid it forward and suggested that we could be in that list. But no one even told us. I just found out by accident by spotting the magazine online. So I thought it was pretty cool.
That's a great feeling, isn't it? I love when that happens, when you get some kind of mention in a top 10 list or an article and that you had no involvement in it. And it's like, oh, wow, someone actually thinks that what we're creating, whatever it might be, a business or a podcast, and they actually think it's worthy to include in the list. It's really kind of humbling, and it's very exciting at the same time, isn't it? Thinking, oh, wow, look, I made that and there it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's a totally humbling experience versus going out there. And like I said at the start, that's a bit of desperation, because I'm not going to lie, I was like that as well. Mira honestly doesn't care about the numbers. That's the power in, having a co-host that doesn't really care about that. Whereas for me, I'm always like, oh, let's see if we can push it to the next milestone. But if I'm honest, like I said, it's really important just to focus on high quality content. That's always going to trump any kind of strategy or any social media action that you take or think is useful, right?
Cool. Okay, and just to wrap up, if you could be a guest on any podcast in the world, which one would it be?
I don't know anyone in particular, but just one that's really pushing creativity and leadership. And there's a load out there, if I'm honest. I mean, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but one that's just, again, like we said, cool with not having a rigid structure about questions and not scared to just go with the flow and see where it ends up,
Cool. Okay. And if people want to find out more about you, Peter, how can they get in touch? How can they listen to your podcast?
Through the mindtakeaway.com. All the podcasts episodes are on there. And if you want to reach out to me, probably best place is LinkedIn as well.
Peter, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
There is an easier way to get booked onto more podcasts as a guest. Join matchmaker.fm for free today and start making connections with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you.